How many miles do you run a week? How many miles should you run a week? Welcome to the Ageless Runner. I'm Ralph. Now, if you're training for a race and following a training program, maybe you got a marathon or half marathon a few months from now and you're in the midst of a training program, then you know how many miles you should run a week because they're specified in your training program. What about if you're not following a training program or you're in between races and you just want to, maintain and get so many miles per week? How many should you run? How many would be a good idea? That's what I'm here to talk about today. Now, at the end of this video, I'll give some recommended ranges depending on different race distances you might be interested in or just for general fitness, and we'll talk about those again later in the video. And one of the key things to determine miles per week you can run is your consistency. What do you think you can consistently run? How many days a week do you want to run? I only run typically 3 days a week. So if you run 4 days a week, you can probably run more miles per week. In fact, when I was training for a half marathon that I wasn't able to do, I added a fourth run in the week to build up my weekly miles. So it has to be a mileage range per week that you feel you can do consistently and where you don't mind spending time on your feet. In other words, say you're going to run 10 miles and your pace is a 9-minute mile, then it would take you 90 minutes to do that. But if your pace is 12 minutes per mile, it's going to take you 2 hours. So the slower your pace, the more time you're going to spend on your feet, the more miles you run per week. Again, the more time you spend on your feet. So you want to have a weekly mileage range that you can do consistently and are okay spending that amount of time up on your feet running. Now, another plus for consistency is your aerobic fitness. The more consistently you run, you get those, 15 miles a week, 20 miles a week, week in, week out, you're going to improve your lungs, you're going to improve your aerobic fitness. So it's a real plus for being consistent. Another thing to consider in the number of miles per week is what your goals are. In other words, if you have races that you'd like to do or you want to improve your performance, you may need to run different miles. For example, if you're going to train for a half marathon or you like doing half marathons, you're going to want to run more miles per week than somebody who only does 5Ks. Or on the other hand, if you do 5Ks but you want to improve your time, you're going to want to run more miles per week than somebody who doesn't care about their time in a 5K. So longer distances and faster times are going to drive more miles per week. Now, another point in consistency is not to do this drop way back after a race. For example, maybe you're training for a half marathon and you're running 25 and 30 miles a week. The race comes and the following weeks you drop back, you do like 5 miles a week for a while. You don't want to do that. You want to get some kind of consistency. Maybe you do that 30 miles a week leading up to the race, but when the race is over, maybe only back off and maybe run 15 to 20. You don't want to have those big changes, those big, run a lot and then weeks later go do a little. It's best to try and be as consistent as you can. That'll maintain your fitness, maintain your training, and help you in the long run. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video. If so, please hit that like icon down below. Boy, those likes really help my channel. Now, another consideration in the number of miles per week is recovery. You need to allow enough recovery time. How many days a week do you want to run? How many days a week should you rest? The more days you run, the more miles you run, the more recovery you need. Again, the more miles you run, the more you risk injury due to fatigue or just muscle wear and tear, joint wear and tear. So you need to pick a mileage per week that you feel you can run and recover adequately so you avoid injury and overtiring yourself. Now, that recovery always means getting adequate sleep. Never sacrifice your sleep for getting miles. In other words, it's so important to get that rest, especially the older we get. The older we get, the more rest we need, the more longer it takes us to recover. So never sacrifice miles for rest time. Make sure you get the rest. That'll keep you as a healthy runner. Remember, a healthy runner beats an injured runner every time. So I want to share some recommended ranges, and these are pretty broad ranges because it really depends on your fitness level. Are you a beginner runner? Are you more of an intermediate runner? If you're an advanced runner, you probably don't need this video. You probably already know what you need to do. But so look at these ranges as very broad and pick what's right for you. And they're kind of based on race distances. Maybe you're not scheduled to do a race, but you're probably race distances you like. For example, I like half marathons. I rarely run anything other than a half marathon. So I'm going to base my miles as if I'm going to run a half marathon later in the year, whether I do or I don't. I'm going to try and keep my miles in that range, so I'll be ready to do a half marathon with minimal preparation. So if you're a 5K person, you might want to think about running 15 to 25 miles per week. Again, if you want to improve your time, if you want to improve your 5K time, you might err of running closer to the 25. If you're a beginner, you don't care about your time, you might want to bias yourself more towards a 15. Again, these are just very broad recommended ranges. And maybe you like 10Ks. In that case, you might be looking somewhere in the range of 15 to 30 miles a week. Now, if you're a half marathon runner, you might be looking at 20 to 40 miles per week. And then as a marathon runner, you might be looking at 25 to 50 miles per week. Now, it's generally recommended not to run more than 50 miles per week, especially if you're just a casual and you're a hobbyist runner like I am, especially the older you get. You're getting above 50, you might be risking injury and being too tired. So think about those ranges. Now, if you just want to run for fitness, you don't have any racing in mind, you don't really care to do races, you just want to be healthy and you enjoy running, then the kind of the sweet spot is generally considered 15 to 20 miles per week. That's a good amount to maintain that fitness, keep your aerobic capacity up, and just keep you in good general health. Now, probably my final point, as I stress in a lot of my videos, is always listen to your body. How are you feeling? Are you getting too tired? Do you feel like you could do more? Always let your body be your guide and how many miles you're running per week. And again, you don't want to injure yourself, don't get overtired. It's the worst thing you could do. That could disrupt your running for a long time if you get hurt or injured. So I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please scroll down and hit that like icon. Those likes really help my channel. And if you're new here, I'd love to have you stick around. Please hit that subscribe icon also. Thanks again and happy running.